Lions, they'll obviously be a team that will push them, but who do you think will be the team to watch?
Honestly, the AFC is so heavily stacked with talent and almost more importantly, quarterbacks. I really think that the Bengals this year might be a team that really challenges the Chiefs. They even did last year, and Joe Burrow, the quarterback, was just coming back from injury. They were still struggling. But imagine now where everybody's healthy, fingers crossed, and they could really challenge the Chiefs to that position, because that's always been a rivalry where the Bengals, more so than not, have taken the W.
Yeah, they've gotten the win over the Chiefs. If the Chiefs were to get to the Super Bowl, they'd face a different team on the other division, the NFC. San Francisco was the team that lost the Super Bowl in absolutely heartbreaking fashion last year in overtime. Do you think that they have a chance to potentially get over the hump? They've lost to the Chiefs twice now, which will definitely stick in their craw a little.
Yeah, and again, looking at the 49ers, I mean, first off, Kyle Shanahan, their head coach, is just an unbelievable mastermind. They have one of the most stacked offenses and healthiest defenses coming into the season. And their defense is really, that was really the stalwart of the team, looking at the Super Bowl run they had last year. But again, 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, and their young quarterback, Brock Purdy, they really could. It could be a rematch this year of the Chiefs and the that we love so much, those individual storylines. So yes, it was definitely Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift last year. I'm sure it will still be a buzz this year, but I have no doubt that the NFL has some other storylines brewing amongst their many players and teams.
Yeah, I'm no doubt about it. And I guess the final question, this is a more personal one for me. Do you think, Phoebe, I should do a pull an all-nighter and just watch the game and then come into work on Friday morning?
Ooh, you know what? I think it is only right for you to stay up, get no sleep. That is what everyone has to do on those Mondays going to work. I think you should do it. Take one for the team, represent all of the NFL out there.
Okay, if everyone listening, Phoebe has told me to stay up, so if you hear me on Friday morning and I'm very tired, then it's Phoebe's fault. Thank you so much. Yeah, so tomorrow might be a struggle for me, guys. Just giving you a little warning, Catherine, you might have a tired colleague next to you.
See you then, see you tomorrow. Now, a beauty queen who received widespread xenophobic abuse in South Africa has told the BBC she'll be seeking therapy because of the saga. Nigeria, which she won at the weekend. When I spoke to Chidima, she told me what her victory meant for her.
I'm really proud of myself because this is something that I've always wanted since 2017. So I'm really glad that I was able to get a second chance and actually achieve this goal.
Just talk us through the process of getting to this victory, because of course there was a controversy back home in South Africa for you. Nigeria stepped in and said you could compete in the country. Just talk us through how that experience was for you.
So at first I didn't think it would be that serious. I just thought, I was just this little girl trying to fulfill a dream. And once I made it through to the top 16, my name really made a spark in South Africa. People felt like I wasn't too South African enough, and they started questioning my nationality as to whether I am eligible to actually represent South Africa. And every single week that I would progress in our reality TV show, it became a big story. And closer to the finale, I was basically told that I need to withdraw the competition or else they would protest and actually take me to court the day before the finale. The Minister of Sports, Gayton McKenzie. So for me, I felt like I actually wanted to take it on and just go through the process because I know that I am South African. I know I was born in South Africa. I know that I did not commit any fraud or anything like that. But then the pressure really started getting worse, and I just felt like it's not worth it, especially for my family. So I just decided it was best for me to actually withdraw from the competition.
At that time, this was international news. We covered it here on the BBC. It was on magazines and websites all around the world. How did that feel for you when all of this was unfolding?
It really was overwhelming. I just felt like it was so unfair that I had a lot of people question my nationality, and it was just based off the fact that I had dual citizenship. And there were other females in the competition who also had dual citizenship, but because they were not of the same color scheme that I was, nothing was taken into action because of that. And I feel like it also could have happened to any other person, but why only me?
What's your experience being born in South Africa and living in the country? Has the issue of, questions around your nationality been raised in the past? Of course, South Africa has a major issue when it comes to xenophobia.
Before, I actually never used to use my name Chidima because I knew of the conflict that South Africa and Nigeria always had. So I was always called Vanessa or Chichi, and people never really raised any issues with regards to that because I also played sports professionally for Western Cape and Western Province. It was only when I entered the Miss SA competition that it actually made waves.
I haven't seen your reaction to this particular point, which is that the Home Affairs Department, following this controversy, then carried out an investigation into you and your family. They say that your mother carried out identity theft in order to become a South African national. What's your response to that?
I don't really have any comment with regards to that. I don't have the facts regarding that matter. So it is a legal matter and we're still taking it on. And as soon as I know everything that is happening, because I haven't been to South Africa now for a while, I will be able to make remarks based on that.
Have you made peace yet with your home country, South Africa? Are you going to go back? Has this changed your relationship with South Africa?
It hasn't changed my relationship. I mean, as much as I am really sad about what happened, I still regard South Africa as home. So I'm just really looking forward to making sure that I get to sort out my citizenship because I know that I am South African.
Chidima Adetshina there. We hope to get reaction from South Africa's sports minister, which will bring you here on Newsday. Goodbye. This is the BBC World Service, where World of Secrets, the apartheid killer, continues.
This is the story of a man who killed so many people, he lost count.
It's astounding that anybody could get away with it.
And the families of his victims want justice.
World of Secrets, the apartheid killer. At bbcworldservice.com or listen to the whole series now, wherever you get your BBC podcasts. Business Daily is in 30 minutes.
Today we're in Bangladesh to find out how the country's political upheaval is affecting its economy. We'll hear from the garment factory owners that supply to the biggest brands in the world.
Protests to put an end to the suffering, to put an end to the frustration that is currently going on right now.
This week we're asking, are Africa's leaders too old to govern the young?
A lot of African countries are still in their first 50, 60 years of being, and so there's still a lot of room for political change. And so this is, I think, only the beginning of youth-driven change in Africa.
I'm Charmaine Cozier. Join me on The Inquiry after the news.
Hello, I'm Roisin Hastie with the BBC News. China's President Xi Jinping has promised over $50 billion in financing for Africa over the next 3 years and to help create 1 million jobs on the continent. Addressing the China-Africa Forum, Beijing's biggest in years, he said China's relations with Africa were at their best period in history. Laura Bicker reports from Beijing.
The 3-day Africa Forum in Beijing is being billed by Chinese state media as the most important diplomatic event of the year. Africa, which is rich in mineral and oil resources and has a population of more than 1 billion people, has become the focus of intense competition between China towards modernization.
The Ugandan marathon runner Rebecca Cheptegei has died 4 days after being set on fire in an alleged attack by her boyfriend. The Olympic athlete was reportedly doused with petrol at her home in Western Kenya, where she'd been training. Haiti has extended a state of emergency to the whole country as the US Secretary of State prepares to visit amid efforts to curb gang violence. Haiti's former Minister for Elections, Matthias Pierre, told the BBC that the situation had improved in Port-au-Prince, but the gangs had spread to other parts parts of the country. He claimed the transitional government lacked a long-term plan of action.
More equipment like armored vehicle and ammunition came to the country to support the national police and the 400 Kenyans to fight the gangs, but the lack of strategy is the biggest issue. I don't see any strategy from the Haitian government to put in place the right people in the position to develop a strategy to fight the gangs.
The president of Colombia has ordered an investigation of the previous government's purchase of Pegasus spy software from Israel. Gustavo Petro said the software, which can be remotely installed on mobile phones, could have been used to spy on opposition politicians, including himself. Warren Bull reports.
Pegasus is promoted as a product designed to combat major crime and terrorist activity. But 3 years ago, an investigation by journalists revealed the extent to which governments around the world were using it to spy on people considered subversive. In a broadcast, President Petro said official documents from the right-wing administration of Ivan Duque showed that the spyware had been purchased from Israel for $11 million in cash and had not appeared in the published budget. He said an investigation was necessary so that Colombian citizens could be content that their rights were respected by the state.
You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. In the latest stage of his trip to Indonesia, Pope Francis has said people of different religions are brothers. At the main mosque in Jakarta, the head of the Roman Catholic Church said wars and the environmental crisis were a threat to humanity. He signed a joint declaration with the Imam of the Istiqlal Mall, which called for religion not to stoke conflict. Palestinian health officials say at least 5 people have been killed in an Israeli strike on a car in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said another person was seriously wounded in the bombing in the northern city of Tubas. The Israeli military said it carried out 3 separate airstrikes against armed Palestinians near Tubas. Israel launched an offensive across the north. Response. The US accused top officials at RT of participating in a Kremlin-backed operation to interfere in the presidential election by covertly recruiting social media influencers to sway US public opinion. In tennis, the world number 1 Iga Swiatek has been knocked out of the US Open by the American Jessica Pegula. The 6th seed reached her first major semi-final in straight sets. Pegula said her overall performance helped her win.
I thought I played a really clean match, served pretty well, returned well. I feel like I didn't really do anything that bad and was able to kind of jump on her really early and I think frustrate her and was able to keep my level even when she picked it up in the second set.
In the men's tournament, the British player Jack Draper reached the last 4 of a Grand Slam for the first time after beating Australia's Alex de Minaur. He'll face the world number 1 Yannick Sinner, who has defeated the 2021 champion Daniil Medvedev. BBC News.
Welcome to The Inquiry. I'm Charmaine Cozier. Each week, 1 question, 4 expert witnesses and an answer. September 2024. Africa is home to 54 countries and the youngest population in the world. The majority of people there are under 30 years old. But it's a different story at the top of many governments on the continent, where power rests with men in their 70s and 80s. Some have also been in office for decades and they have no plans to stand down anytime soon. So this week we're asking, are Africa's leaders too old to govern the young?
Part 1. Playing with the rules.
We've seen a lot of peaceful transitions of power across the continent, but we still have significant pockets of resistance where incumbents have refused to step down.
Dr. Adam Kassie-Abebe is a senior advisor in constitution building at the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance in the Netherlands. He's also vice president of the African Network of Constitutional Lawyers based in South Africa. The median age indicates the age of the midpoint of a population. A low number signals a younger, faster growing one.
The median age is in the 20s in Africa, but the age of the leadership, the presidents in particular, is the highest in the world. It's really quite staggering.
The median age for leaders of African countries is 62. The presidents of Namibia, Zimbabwe and Ghana are around 20 years older than that.
And so the longer a person stays, that discrepancy in age between the median age of the population and the leadership increases.
Presidents usually stick to the maximum number of terms they can serve as set out in their constitutions. A limit of 2 is common.
But a lot of other leaders continued playing with the constitutional rules. And so if you look at, for instance, the president in Uganda, the president in Equatorial Guinea, the president in Cameroon and in Djibouti, they have regularly changed the constitution to be able to stay for long. And these are some of the oldest leaders, not just in Africa, but across the world.
Some countries have ditched term limits completely. The president of Equatorial Guinea has been in power for 45 years.
And in some cases, they just postpone the elections without actually changing the constitution. The best example was perhaps the former president of the DRC, Kabila, who postponed the elections for several years, effectively extending his term. He did that because he knew if he organized elections, he was going to lose.
It's difficult to know exactly why a long-ruling leader won't quit, but there are a few ideas.
I think there's a sense that without them, things can collapse. And in some cases, especially once an incumbent has attempts to extend their terms, often they have to deploy the army, the police. So there's a lot of violence that comes. You want to stay in power so that you are not held accountable. If there was corruption allegations, for instance, or violence, we're using the army alone. So it's a combination of things, essentially self-interest, but also delusion, partly created by an interested class of people whose livelihood essentially depends on an incumbent continuing.
So how old is too old?
The fundamental thinking is not really about how old a person is. If a single person, especially an incumbent, keeps running, regardless of how old they are, he might be young, but if he keeps running, the chances are that the elections will not be fair and credible. So it's not really about excluding the old people, but it's really about the basics of ensuring that there's free, fair and credible elections.
Our next expert witness is from an African country that's led by the oldest president in the world.
Part 2. Work in progress.
The president of Cameroon is President Paul Biya, and he's 91 years old. The median age in Cameroon is 19.
Achieleke Christian Leke is from Cameroon. He's executive director of the Youth Empowerment Organisation, Local Youth Corner Cameroon, and he's 34 years old.
Well, in terms of government reaching out to the youth population in terms of their policy, I would say that it's a work in progress. Young people in Cameroon are expecting a lot from their government in terms of relationship and in terms of opportunities and in terms of engagement.
Countries use different age ranges to define who is classed as a young person. In Cameroon's 28 million population, it's 18 to 35-year-olds.
Young people under 35 make up about 75% of the country's population, which of course means that young people have the power to decide and to make choices of who leads them or who guides them.
But not all young people can do that because Cameroon's legal voting age is 21. Their president, Paul Biya, has been in power for almost 42 years. Most of the population have never known another leader.
We are in a patriarchal kind of system where young people are still seen as troublemakers, where young people are still seen as not wise enough. There is still this tension, and it's even much more complicated because even the young are now blaming the old for making things difficult in this country.
Some of those difficulties are economic.
A burning issue is around the aspect of employability and fighting poverty, with the recent challenges in terms of increasing taxes, cost of basic commodities, fuel, which used to be 600 francs early last year, now it's around 800 francs, and young people are the most affected because we are the ones who do not have jobs, we are the ones who are looking for access to the best education, and yet we are the ones who will get our scarce resources to purchase these products which have greatly skyrocketed in the market. So I think this is a big issue.
A 21-year-old is old enough to vote, but still too young to enter politics to represent their peers.
For you to be nominated to run for restricted access party, you should be the age of 23. And for you to run for president, you should be at least 35. So it would technically be impossible to have a youth based on Cameroon's definition as a president of Cameroon.
There's also concern that older politicians will miss opportunities to identify and act on issues that would connect with many under 35s.
Youths nowadays are leveraging on new technology and media to be able to create wealth and create employability. But they are needing government to make the environment very favorable so that these can thrive. Young people are really clamoring for peace and security in the context of Cameroon, because in times of conflict, nothing works. Even businesses fail, and even companies do not thrive, and access to education becomes an issue.
Cameroon's long-running security crises include cross-border clashes with Nigeria's militant Islamist group Boko Haram in the far north region, and conflict with separatists in the northwest and southwest regions. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced to other parts of the country. Others are leaving.
The Canadian government launched one examination that people are supposed to take to go to Canada. You will not imagine that thousands and thousands of young people, were scrambling to sit in for this exam because they want to travel abroad. We have a lot of cases of young people who are passing through Mexico, some of them even losing their lives to go to the US, and those who are trying to get into Europe. So that quest to look for greener pastures is a really, really big issue.
Those who remain in Cameroon aren't completely overlooked by government. There's a Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education.
We have the National Youth